This evening, I want to talk about St. Clare. Liturgically, this is it's 813 years since on the evening of Palm Sunday, she left her house of her rich family, and having heard St. Francis's preaching, went to him to ask to be brought into that same life of simplicity and poverty and commitment to the religious life. It was the evening of Palm Sunday in the year 1212. And then a connection with this evening as we embrace this Mass as representing the institution of the Eucharist by Jesus at the Last Supper, and also the call to service in the symbolism of the washing of the feet, service for all, and then in particular, the service of priests in ordained ministry. All three of those are wrapped up in this observation of the evening Mass of the Lord's Supper. So many of you may know this story of one of the main miracles attributed to St. Clare is not having to do with Holy Week or Easter, but actually Christmas. On Christmas Eve, and I believe 1252, she was very sick and was not able to go to the Christmas Eve Mass at the Basilica of St. Francis there in Assisi. And that deeply disappointed her. And while she was there in her room, also in Assisi, she had a vision of that Mass. And I presume, and I understand it, confirmed later, talking with the other sisters who had gone, she could recount what happened. So God enabled her to see that Mass going on a little bit further away in Assisi at the Basilica. So her ardent desire for the Eucharist and for the Mass, it's not just the Eucharist in isolation. It's the celebration of the Mass. It's Jesus giving himself to us in the Word of Scripture, in the Blessed Sacrament, the Eucharist, and his presence within each of us who are baptized. So all that, the Mass, the entirety of the Mass, and the Eucharist itself meant so much to St. Clare that God blessed her with that gift of the vision of the Mass, the Christmas Eve Mass that was going on at the Basilica of St. Francis. One might see that as one example of fulfilling these words from the first reading. It's Exodus chapter 12 and the Passover, the original Passover, when it uses this phrase, a perpetual institution, that Jesus has wanted to make a perpetual gift of himself through the Mass and the ways he comes to us in the Mass and particularly in the Eucharist. And then you might say he extended that to St. Clare, even though she couldn't physically be there in the Basilica, to bless her with the vision of it, a form of participation in the Mass. So that miracle that St. Clare received of participating in the Mass mystically, one might say, figuratively speaking, we are able to perpetuate that miracle through the ministry of taking the Blessed Sacrament to those who can't physically come to Mass. And so many of you have heard this, I think, or read it in the bulletin. We have reinstituted our ministry of taking the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament to people who can't participate in Mass. One form of that is visiting parishioners who are homebound. Another branch of that ministry is going to the hospitals. But I invite us to see it. It's not just taking the Blessed Sacrament in isolation to those people. Okay, it's not just, obviously that's a wonderful and astounding thing and a great ministry. But you might say it's perpetuating Jesus' giving of himself in the Eucharist in the Mass. And so as those people are not able to come physically to Mass, which is the normal primary expected way to receive communion is by participation in the Mass. And so when we take the Blessed Sacrament to people, whether it's me or a parishioner, I invite us to embrace the fullness of the glory of what we're doing. It's not just taking, I hate to say just, because I don't want to obviously sound like I'm not diminishing the importance of the Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament itself, but it's not simply the fact that they can't receive communion, it's the fact that they cannot participate in Mass, in the community's celebration, where Jesus makes himself present to us by his sacramental presence in each of us who are baptized, in the Scriptures, and in the Blessed Sacrament. So we, just like St. Clare had this miracle of seeing the Mass going on, it's almost as if when we are participating in this ministry, its parishioners, not just taking communion, it is in fact, you could see it almost as if you are the miracle that God is using, like he used with St. Clare, for those people to participate in Mass, as it were. And so in that vision, brothers and sisters, what you're doing is helping me, as the pastor of this parish, have Jesus, through the Mass celebrated here, then on my behalf, since I can't get to everybody who is homebound or is in the hospitals, you're helping me help those people, figuratively speaking, participate in Mass. So that's why the church offers, when we take communion to people, a liturgy with prayer, a brief scripture reading, and presentation then of the Blessed Sacrament to the person. So just embrace that, as that is you being the miracle of helping that person participate in Mass as fully as they can, when you, taking up this ministry, take the Eucharist to them, but also use the liturgy that the church upholds and hopes and expects will be given to those brothers and sisters who can't be here physically. So that's one dimension of this ministry that we have reconstituted. It's a parish ministry for the good of those who can't participate in Mass. This perpetual institution of Jesus giving of himself. Secondly, with the washing of the feet and that embracing that image as service, also simply going to visit people, either in the hospital or at homes, is a form of service. Jesus the servant. And so another facet of our ministry that we're relaunching, actually this is a new part, is to simply visit people either in the hospitals or in their homes as ambassadors of St. Elizabeth of Hungary Parish, and broadly speaking, as ambassadors of the church. To visit them, to pray with them, to perhaps read scripture with them, spend a few minutes with them, and then find out if they want to receive communion. And then we'll have either the same person or someone else or me go and bring that person communion. It's like, though you won't physically be doing it, it's as if you are washing their feet by visiting them, whether or not you take the Lord to them in the Eucharist. You are taking the Lord to them by his presence in you as a baptized Christian. And that too is as an ambassador of the parish, and then by extension, an ambassador of Christ and of the church. So as we celebrate Jesus' gift of himself, launching, as it were, the perpetual institution of giving himself to us in the Mass and in the Eucharist, and as a servant, as an example for us to follow, let us rejoice that in our parish we have a new way to have the miracle of the Mass and of the Eucharist and the miracle of Jesus the servant extended from us to others.